at 93.5, 1590 WAKR. It's time to go to film school. Film study professor Dr. Joe Fortunato on board with us this morning, and we're going back to the early 1980s. It's kind of a fun movie, a guy that was really red hot at the theaters at that time. And it's a nice rom-com for sure. And he's going to go back in time with us. And Joe, why don't you take the story from there, my friend?
Well, good morning, Red. Good morning, everyone. And, a couple weeks ago, we did a film, The Goodbye Girl, and I said it was sort of a forgotten classic. And I kind of feel like today's film falls into that same category. And that is Arthur from 1981, released in July of 1981, written and directed by Steve Gordon, starring Dudley Moore, Liza Minnelli, and John Gielgud, I should say, Sir John Gielgud. This film had 4 Oscar nominations. It won 2, one for supporting actor for John Gielgud, and the other for original song by Christopher Cross, the main title theme of the movie, which was a big hit. We'll talk about that. If you're not familiar with the story, Dudley Moore plays an alcoholic billionaire, a playboy named Arthur Bach, and he must marry a woman who he does not love, or he will be cut off from his massive fortune. Then Arthur falls in love with a poor waitress played by Liza Minnelli, and he's got to decide between love or money. So a classic rom-com setup, and it was like, as you said, Dudley Moore was way hot then, coming off the movie 10 and other things like that. And this is just, it was a hugely popular movie, and I kind of feel like it doesn't get a lot of remembrance these days, so we're here to do that today. This was the 4th most popular movie in 1981 in both U.S. and Canadian box office. It was so popular that when it was released on video the following year, it stayed at the top of the charts for almost 2 years. This is Dudley Moore's only Oscar-nominated performance. He didn't win, but he was nominated. He was, this was a period of time. Of course, times change, and at this point in time, drunk humor was more in vogue. It's not that funny to me, but it certainly was to a lot of people. And Dudley Moore was said to have sort of based his performance partly on his former partner, Peter Cook, who had an excessive drinking problem, and it sort of soured him and Moore's comedic partnership in the 70s. I mentioned the movie's title song, Arthur's Theme, The Best That You Can Do. That was co-written by Christopher Cross, Burt Bacharach, Carol Bear-Sager, and Peter Allen, who was Liza Minnelli's ex-husband at the time, and he contributed a few lyrics and not much else, but the song was a big hit, and it was, and the film had been released in the U.S. in July, and it was on its way out of movie theaters by the time the song was released as a single, but as the film was released in most countries following its U.S. release, the buzz of the song meant more box office. So it created like a worldwide box office success because of the song. And frankly, it's still a yacht rock staple today, that film, or that song, I'm sorry.
There's no doubt about it. The other thing with this movie, and you mentioned it, Joe, when Sir John Gielgud comes onto the screen in the movie, to me, he steals the show each and every time. I remember the movie, and I always wanted more of him, but probably more wouldn't have worked. But I thought they utilized him perfectly.
Totally steals the movie, and of course, like I said, he was rewarded with an Oscar. He originally turned down the role of Hobson, the butler, several times because he finally accepted it because the salary was just too good to pass up. But he didn't quite like the humor, or didn't really think he could be funny. Of course, he's a great actor; he could probably do anything. But yeah, he was tough to get on board, and finally got on board. Talking about some casting, the role of Hobson was originally intended for either David Niven or Alec Guinness, so kind of hard to imagine either of those two. And then was also at one point considered to be an English actor, and in those cases they considered Burt Lancaster and Gregory Peck. And they said, well, you maybe need a British person. They considered Peter Ustinov, James Mason, so a lot of casting that went into that role. That John Gielgud ended up winning the role. Some other casting notes: Carrie Fisher and Deborah Winger turned down the role of Linda, which went to Liza Minnelli. There was a whole host of other people that were considered for that role. And then the same is true of the role of Arthur. Originally, John Belushi was offered the role of Arthur, but turned it down, fearing some typecasting, which he's probably right about that. Originally, the director, Steve Gordon, wanted to cast George Segal in the lead role of Arthur. But after the success of 10, Dudley Moore ended up replacing Segal on that list. And again, a whole host of big names in the 70s and 80s that were up for that role as well, but ultimately it went to Dudley Moore. You said you wanted more of Hobson. 4 different endings were actually shot, and the director still hadn't figured out which ending he was going to use during editing. And eventually, the original ending focused more on Arthur and Hobson's relationship than Arthur's and Linda's. And it's a very emotional scene towards the end of the movie, and I'll leave you to enjoy that on your own if you go revisit it. Unfortunately, the director, Steve Gordon, sadly died of an unexpected heart attack just over a year after this film was released. He was only 44 years old. And, it's sort of sometimes the movie gods smile on things. We said sort of the circuitous route that John Gielgud had that come to play this role. But in fact, funny fact, his actual first name is Arthur in real life.
And of course, they did try a sequel to this thing. I think it was called Love on the Rocks or something that wasn't nearly the hit. But
and they also had a remake in 2011. Yeah. So, but stick with the original, and I think you'll be happier.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it in a while, and I have not, but I remember seeing it and loving it. And Joe's exactly right. Some of these we go over on Fridays. You kind of dust off a little bit, bring back in and give them a look, because Dudley Moore and Liza Minnelli and Sir John Gielgud are just terrific in this movie. Again,
I'll
film
tell one quick production story. Sorry.
Yeah.
At one point during the production, Liza Minnelli is supposed to board a bus in front of Bergdorf Shopping Mall. It's not a mall, but Bergdorf Shopping on Fifth Avenue. When a real bus came along, she boarded it thinking it was the, quote, movie bus. Not only till she was halfway down the block did she realize that she was actually on a real city bus, and the whole crew was cracking up as she just sort of drifted away.
That is good. I'm glad you got that in. Joe Fortunato, Dr. Joe Fortunato with Film School. Joe, what do you have coming up? Anything soon?
Well, a little bit of a last minute, but I do have something coming up next Monday and Tuesday. I'm going to be doing a Fortunato Film School online, and that is available to anybody that wants to go to my website, joefortunato.net, and get the Zoom link. I'm going to be doing a special Fortunato Film School for ASU, and I'm doing Superman the movie, which we did at Jilly's a while back, and a lot of people enjoyed it. So if you missed that or want to see it again, go to my website, and the Zoom link will be there, and that is going to be happening next Monday and Tuesday. It's a 2-parter. So anyone interested in this, you could be anywhere in the country or the world and join us for this one. So an online Fortunato Film School, kind of a last minute thing, but that's next Monday and Tuesday. Go to my website, joefortunato.net, and the Zoom link will be there, and you can get some more information.
Well, I'll tell you what, my daughter will be on that. My one twin, Gia, that is her all-time favorite movie. She was disappointed. She had a cross-country meet when we did the film school last, Joe, so she's excited. I'll get her on board with this next week for sure.
Oh, that's terrific. I'm glad.
All right, Joe, we'll do it again next week. Thank you for the time, my friend. Always appreciate it.
Okay, talk to you then. See you.
All right. Dr. Joe Fortunato, Film School, each and every Friday at this time, right here on the morning show, 93.5, 1590 WAKR.